Q Time is a classic Atlanta soul food restaurant located in the historic West End. Q Time Soul Food is a family business started by Fred and Christine Crenshaw. Come on in, relax, and sink your chops into our tantalizing, mouth-watering, distinctive soul food with a twist, the Q Time way. 1120 Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard, or call your order in at 404-758-2881. Do you miss your mama's cooking? Then come on down to Q Time, an Urban Passport member.
Shop Velvet Online Women's Boutique to spice up your closet with trendy, unique looks. We have fashionable and chic looks at very affordable prices. Velvet Boutique offers free shipping all year long on all orders. Shop online at www.melvetboutique.com. That's www.melvetboutique.com. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. Shop Velvet Online Women's Boutique.
Majesty is a premium health and wellness tea line focused on bringing delicious yet healthy tea blends to the community. Filled with an abundance of vitamins and antioxidants, we work to blend teas with exotic spices and fruits to produce scrumptious and wholesome beverages. So check us out at mymajesties.com. That's MyMajesties.com. My Majesties, an Urban Passport member.
This is Brian Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Lab. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Lab, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
Sugar Chateau Desserts.
Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah, man. I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with this hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab with our Sunday weekend edition of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Welcome to episode 113 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, radio show and podcast, a show that's covering the sporting HBCU diaspora, all things HBCU sports, from institutions large and small, from NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, the HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with co-host Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, with BJ Jones, the HBCU football guru, as we call it, our analyst, giving you some inside information on the game placed yesterday. And we'll do a little special thing today because we're going to talk about some of the matchups today. We got Tennessee State of the OVC playing today, and we also have the matchup that seems like everybody wants a piece of right now, which is Jackson State as they host Mississippi Valley State in a SWAC game this weekend. With that, we are filming from our home studios right here in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. With that, let me jump right in here. Mike, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm pretty good, Doc. I see we have an all-star cast on this fine Sunday morning. We have BJ Jones, the HBCU football whisperer. So even then we got 1400, the VIP crew, bowl interviewing award-winning team. So.
Oh yeah, you got Get it live. We gonna get BJ Jones. See, he trying to be sneaky. He got his mic all muted. Come on in here, man. Don't hold up. You in there? Go on and get ready. Charles, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Dr. Cavil. I'm coming to you from Jackson, Mississippi today. So, we're gonna enjoy this game today.
Yeah, man, you live, so we're gonna get a little bit of the energy in the stadium before long, which is a good thing. That's what we do. This is live, baby. And then we gonna look at BJ Jones. He got his football uniform and helmet in the background, man. He just stepped up a level. I see it.
Man, I had to do something, man. I was like, man, you got to get you some scenery. So, hey, man, still in progress. I might have kept a couple of jerseys for my playing days. I think we out of jurisdiction for that.
And the statue.
Hey, BJ P. Richardson looking for them jerseys, man.
I got all of them.
But these new apparel deals going up, they couldn't use it anyway. You say.
And I couldn't get Coach Willie from FAMU to give me one little hat. I was like,
no doubt about it. Today's episode of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab is sponsored by THG Agency LLC. THG Agency is a company that provides sporting and educational consulting and data analytics. With that said, we're also brought to you from the 1400 Club because after we give you this full 50 minutes, hour worth, stay tuned, stay on BCSN Network because you're going to be coming live for more in-depth information of the Jackson State, Mississippi Valley State matchup between Neely and Charles. Will bring you that in terms of the 1400 Club. So stick around. We're essentially going to give you 2 full hours of information before you get in and get to watch the big game today between Jackson State and Mississippi Valley. The Delta Devils and the Tigers get it on. With that, let's take a step back and let's get into some MEAC. Let's show the MEAC some love. Obviously, they're not playing a full spring slate, if you would, this spring, but they do have some teams that have decided to play. There's Howard University, South Carolina State, and Delaware State. So you had South Carolina State hosting Delaware State. Interesting matchup when you get into this game here. South Carolina State won the game 17-9. I was interested. I got a chance to actually watch this game. You talking about one of those games where you go between the 20 and the 20. South Carolina State was getting it done so many different ways. They just controlled it. Team stats, they were all over it, really pounding Delaware State. But Delaware State has this ability, if you would, and they kind of did this in the previous games, to Howard to stick around and find a way. And they gave a scare, if you would, to South Carolina State because it looked like they were going to steal another one. And big late drive put the game out of reach. When just give you some indication, when you're talking about total yards, South Carolina State had 341 total yards to just 223 by Delaware State. Passing, 175 to South Carolina State, 106. Rushing was pretty similar, 166 to 117. So South Carolina State had the edge there. But I'll let you all get into the numbers a little bit. In fact, we're going to give our guest a treat of the day because we're going to have him regular on here. We're going to go straight to BJ Jones. As Mike Washington said, the HBCU football whisperer. Let's go ahead and whisper and tell the folks what they need to know about this game. What were your thoughts coming into?
I mean, the biggest thing for me was South Carolina State's inability to capitalize on the red zone. It seems like, they were able to move the football well, but once they got inside the 20s, it was always something. It was either a turnover, untimely penalties. They really shot themselves in the foot. Be honest, South Carolina State probably should have added another 14 points on the board easily. But what I like about Delaware State is that they play hard. They may not have the X's and O's that South Carolina State has, but you couldn't tell that on yesterday. Those guys played hard. They forced some turnovers, and they were able to run the football a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so they were able to run the ball up against that South Carolina State front seven, and they had some opportunities. Delaware State had some opportunities to win that football game in spite of not playing their best football. So shout out to that staff up there in Delaware. And South Carolina State finally gets their first win at the end of the 2019 season.
Tied for first going into the month.
No doubt about it. Let me go to Mike. Mike, what were your thoughts in terms of this game? Was there anything that stood out to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time of possession favored South Carolina State, but they couldn't capitalize on it. They had, more first down, more rushing yards. They had total possession of the ball, the majority or the greater half of the majority of the game, and couldn't capitalize on it. And I just think that they left a couple of touchdowns on the board just based on play, and statistically will tell you, you look at turnovers. They once they got in on the field, they just couldn't convert. So
certainly, let me go to Charles as we get in this and get his breakdown. Like you said, he's live over there, so we might get a little feedback as they're getting set up for their things. But what were your thoughts in terms of Delaware State and South Carolina State matchup?
Yeah, bear with me. I'm live over here, but I think the big thing that jumped out at me was this was the Corey Fields that I was expecting to see. Kind of the dynamic quarterback that can give you both things with not just his legs but his arm as well. Threw for 175, and he rushed also for another 40 yards. So they kept the chains moving for South Carolina State, but they were able to run the ball. They had 1, 2, 3, 4 different players with at least 40 some odd yards. So they were able to really move the chains in this game. So kudos to South Carolina State Bulldogs getting back off the mat from that loss to Alabama A&M and getting this victory against Delaware State.
Thank you for that. This is what everybody wants to know now. I'm going to go back to B.J. Jones. Does this tell us anything more about Alabama A&M? Because a lot of the questions coming out of that game, I was trying to get an indication, was Alabama A&M maybe that good, or was it about the competition? What does this start to tell us a little more? Obviously, when you're in this shortened season and conference play, everything seems to be much more important. So when you do it like that, every data point starts to set it up. So what does this data point tell us a little more, even not just about South Carolina State, but also about Alabama A&M, B.J. Jones?
Well, it's kind of what I talked about last week. South Carolina State lost a lot from that 2019 football team. I think it was 15 or 16 starters. But the name South Carolina State, it reigns amongst HBCU fans. We know where Buddy Pugh has that program. This is not that South Carolina State team. This team is going to take them a while. Alabama A&M, still give them their credit because they had to go up there short week, not having a lot of film or film at all. And they went up there and they really laid it down on South Carolina State. So the win on Alabama A&M, you still have to give them credit. Now, was it as impressive as a win as people initially thought, seeing that name South Carolina State? No, but A&M will have some opportunities to prove themselves coming up in the coming weeks.
Yeah,
definitely.
They might get their chance next week.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
I'll talk about Prairie in a minute. We'll slow your roll. All those folks, in fact, they want you to go all.
Talk about data points. That will be a data point for me.
Okay. All right. Before we do that, let's round it out. Give me some players to keep your eyes on. I'm going to go to you, Mike, first in regards. Give me some players, either or both, from Delaware State and South Carolina State that we need to keep our eyes on that really turned your head in terms of what they were able to get done in that game.
I guess what oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, BJ. I'm sorry.
Oh, I got one, and it's number one, the receiver from South Carolina State. Man, he looks the part. I mean, I saw him last week against Alabama A&M, but then I saw him again on yesterday. He looks the part. Like, he looks like a Sunday receiver. I think he's about 6'2".
Shaq Davis.
Yes, he looks.
Yeah.
The
6'5", 180 sophomore.
Yes. Yeah. I like him. I think he has a bright future.
Something South Carolina. You sure right. That's it. Yeah.
He got something that you can't coach, and that's that size, that prototypical size. You can't coach that. All right. So, I mean, I like him. And then I like the running backs, believe it or not, from Delaware State. and they have a defensive tackle that can get after it also.
Yeah. I guess.
What was some people
Yeah,
that you
I guess what I was going to say is that typically you're used to a traditional powerhouse running South Carolina State team. And, BJ Jones alluded to, Quan Davis, but I was also going to say the pair of Quan Davis and Tyrese Nick. They combined for about 105, 110 yards. So I would look out for them. And they have a formidable running back by committee and James. You can throw Ja'Cory Benson in there, but they have a pretty good running back committee. So they have kind of a balanced offense. I'd look for those players to stand out a little bit more.
Good point. Let me go to you, Charles. Charles, what are some players that stood out to you in terms of Delaware State, South Carolina State that you want us to keep eyes on as we continue with this?
I think BJ touched on it. The emerging players for South Carolina State. Corey Fields, quarterback, and Shaq Davis, the receiver. Those are two guys that I think, kind of make South Carolina State go. When we think South Carolina State, we kind of think defense and running football. But last year, they showed that they could throw the football a little bit, and Corey Fields picked up where it left off last season. In 2019. So nice outing against Delaware State for South Carolina State. And Corey Fields being able to do what he is able to do. He kind of reminds you or puts you in the mold of those SWAC quarterbacks that are able to do it both with their arms and the legs.
Yep.
No doubt about it. Let's jump over and switch back into SWAC mode, and let's think about the State Fair Classic, the spring edition, played this weekend. And you had the matchup, Grambling coming off a loss to Jackson State, Prairie coming off a nail-biting win to Texas Southern. And so both teams had some statements they could make in the second. And I believe a statement was made. Prairie wins the game 17-10. So Prairie improves to 2-0, while Grambling falls to 0-2. Man, that was a big matchup in a lot of ways. Let's go, before we talk about some particular players, let's go into the anatomy of the matchup itself and give you some stats that maybe stood out to me in a little bit and see what your thoughts in terms of what that looks like. When we talk about this game, first of all, you got to understand that it was moved from the Cotton Bowl, moved over to where the Texas Rangers previously played. They retrofitted that facility in terms of football field, and they played some matchups over there. Total yards in this game at the end of the day was Prairie with 368. Grambling had 308. Passing was 217 by Prairie and 203 for Grambling. Rushing was 151, 105. In a lot of ways, Prairie was taking it to the Grambling early. Big turnovers kept this game close, I should say, and gave Grambling a chance to maybe pull it out at the end. Prairie View's defense, and I'm gonna go to BJ. He's been critical of the defense, and I would say rightfully so. But I would say, does he feel that maybe there's a change in that? Or, I want to get his insight, because he said that they had some folks that looked good, and they brought some folks that went in. But he said it wasn't necessary about the quality of players they had. It was more about the mindset, and that really resonated with me. So I want to go in there, and I'm gonna go to BJ Jones again, the HBCU Whisperer. He brings us the knowledge like nobody else. So I want to get his thoughts on this, and then I'm gonna circle back and see what Charles thinks, and then Mike on this matchup, because I see Charles talking about he wants to know as well. What's up? What's BJ Jones have to say about the Prairie View defense?
To the Prairie View A&M defense, I question you guys' toughness for the last two seasons. On that, they're breaking it this year. What they did yesterday with Grambling, limiting Grambling on the ground, making Grambling, forcing the quarterback change for Grambling. That defense, those all SWAC selections. They're playing like all SWAC selections, and they're playing together as a unit now, as opposed to individual talent. So you gotta like what Prairie View is doing. And in the past, you can question Prairie View's physicality. I don't think you can do that anymore with the way they played on yesterday. It'll be interesting to see if they can keep that up as we move through this spring season.
I'm gonna go with Mike. As you was getting in there, it was fascinating this game because there was no television, and a lot of folks are gonna fall out on that. And it wasn't necessarily Prairie View, Grambling, and or the SWAC's choice. It was the promoter's choice. It'll be fascinating to see how that moves forward because a lot of folks were upset. There was one young lady that actually did a FaceTime in terms of the game by her phone, and everybody was trying to figure it out. And you didn't have any real information in terms of Grambling doing the radio coverage of the game. So people were texting, providing updates, and it's amazing to see the interest that's out here in SWAC games. Now that you get a couple of them broadcast in the spring, you can tell folks are into this, desperate for it, maybe a word, and they gonna get their fix however they needed to. And so that was fascinating for me from a sports management perspective to see what's going on in terms of the interest. But back to the game with Charles in some way. Let me know, what are your thoughts in terms of what you saw here, Mike, with this matchup?
Oh, okay. So I think defense. I thank you, BJ Jones, for acknowledging the defensive prowess of Prairie View, because we've been called to the table so many times, but you heard it from the HBCU football whisperer. I think DJ Conley stepped up and looked really well. There were several times he really stepped. This is a freshman, y'all. So he stepped up. I think he kind of solidifying his. The thing that concerns me, if you look at the numbers, Prairie View had the ball 43 minutes of the game. There's 60 minutes in the game, and they walked away with 17 points. Now, was that a function of their ability to convert? Offensive discipline, I don't know. I think those are some tweaks they have to, but there were a lot of drop passes in that game by some of the Prairie View receivers, but they came up with the big plays. But I can't speak enough about their defensive stand. They, whenever Grambling got the ball, I don't think they have more than two or three drives that yielded more than 2 or 3 third down conversions. So hats off to the defense.
Great points you make there, Mike. Defense made a statement, no doubt about it. I think, as both of you are saying, it'll be fascinating to see, can they continue this, obviously, in regards to this? Is this more indication as we get those data points? Is this more indication of Grambling? Or is this Prairie View changing of the guards in terms of the defensive side? We'll take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about the offensive side and get into Grambling analysis as well. This is Dr. Ville with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, as well as BJ Jones for our Sunday edition, a wrap-up of what took place in terms of SWAC and HBCU football action.
Sugar Chateau Desserts is a specialty bakery located in the Charlotte, North Carolina metro area. We will create delicious and one-of-a-kind treats for any occasion. Sugar Chateau is currently shipping cakes in a jar, offering a variety of different flavors in a single-serve container that can help you celebrate in accordance with social distancing. Place your orders today by calling 803-526-7895 or visiting sugarchateaudesserts.com.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KEAVERSVOICE.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
Let's face it, shopping for insurance can be time-consuming. That's why when it comes to your auto, home, and life insurance needs, make things simple and trust the experts at Allstate. They will help you get the coverage that fits your needs while helping you bundle your life, home, and auto policies. Bundling saves you money, sure, but it also saves you time, so you can enjoy the things that matter most even more. Contact me, Tammy Haynes, your local agent, for a free personalized insurance quote. Allstate, are you in good hands?
Talking about. They compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna law, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention.
This is Dr. Ville with Inside HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, and BJ Jones is our Sunday specialist in terms of what we call as Mike has now officially named him the HBCU Football Whisperer. I like that. I thought my HBCU football analyst was pretty up there, but that was pretty cool, Mike. I like that. Charles Bishop is literally at the stadium live, and it's looked like they're having some Wi-Fi issues. So we'll see if we can get that correct. But stick with us, because if they can get it correct, he'll be back on here. But more importantly, he'll be doing his 1400 club. So we'll see if we can make that work. But we're going to bring it to you and break it down. So no worries as we continue to do this. Let's get back into it. I'm going to go back to you, BJ Jones, in regards to what are you seeing from Grambling? What are some of the issues? People are having some concern. Is it Grambling, or is it more about who they're playing? It just the teams that they're playing are playing, relatively speaking, good football right now.
So this, with Grambling dropping down to 0-2 on yesterday, I think that this is the 6th time that they have done so under Broderick Fobbs, where they have come into the season and put themselves into a hole. And we know what Grambling has done, especially the last 3 years, where they've lost their first 2 conference games, 2019, Bama State, and then Prairie View. But when you look at Grambling, that offense really didn't move until they made a quarterback change. Once they made the quarterback change, offense became a little bit more efficient. They were able to put some points on the board. Their inability to run the football effectively has to be concerning. And their inability to stop other teams from running the ball effectively has to be concerning. So I think with Grambling, there's a lot of Grambling fans that are scratching their heads this morning, and they're not playing good football at all. And the turnover bug has bitten them again. So how do they fix that? We don't know, but you got a lot of unhappy people off of I-20 up in northern Louisiana, and they're looking for some answers, and they want them now, like J.D. Whitworth. They want them now.
That's a great point. So you talking about Walker coming in there from Hickbottom. What are your thoughts? You think he's going to get more opportunities, or was this just a situation where they decided just to do something to see if they could pick up some momentum in this game? As you said, at one point the game was 17-3 Prairie View. And this was after Prairie View had got into the red zone twice, and you had wide receivers make big plays in terms of to get what would be first downs to set up, goal-to-goal type situations, and trying to get extra yards, literally fumble the ball to take points off the board, if nothing else, field goal, but keeping them down in their territories. And so great points you're making between that. I'm going to go to Mike and then come back to you for some more analysis in that, because you're seeing the issues with the inability to run the ball quite a bit across the conference. So it's interesting to see what's going on there. Mike, what are your thoughts more in terms of Grambling? What are you seeing from a Grambling's perspective in terms of what took place in this game yesterday?
Offensive discipline. I think bringing in another quarterback, I think that did help. I don't think that's the last time we'll see it. I think from what I'm hearing and seeing, I think you may see him again. I guess the other problem that I have, Elijah Walker, you're going to see him again is, that's 2 weeks in a row where Grambling has stalled out in the final moments trying to at least pull out a win. All right. That's 2 weeks in a row where they've had lots of turnover issues. That's 2 weeks in a row where they've had third down efficiency less at around the 30 to 40% range. So there's some offensive discipline issues there. You don't know if it's at the quarterback position. You don't know if it's functionally at the wide receiver or running back. But I think, there's something there. I don't know if they've quite put their hands on it. You heard a lot of Grambling fans just unhappy, complaining about it. They were voicing it on social media. Here we go again. So they're not happy. I agree with BJ Jones, but I think functionally that offense, I don't know if you have the pieces in the right place or not, But I think, Elijah Walker coming in, I don't think that's an anomaly. I don't think that's something you can attribute that happened at that point in the game. I think you may see that young man again if things continue to progress that way.
That's a great point. We got Charles back. So we're just talking about the State Fair Classic. We broke down the Prairie View side of it, and then we got into some of the Grambling concerns that people are having out there. So you can go into either direction, Charles. What were your thoughts in terms of either the statement made by Prairie View and or some of the concerns that you're hearing from the Grambling fans out there? Which direction do you want to take this?
Well, I think the thing that jumped out for me is the fact that Grambling gave up 6 sacks. And somebody needs to find Story Jackson at the end of a game. That's twice now. Story Jackson, game ending sack, strip sack against Texas Southern, game ending strip sack against Grambling. So I think those are the things that really jump out and concern me with regards to Grambling. They gave up 6 sacks. So poor Jeremy Hickbottom, he went down 4 times yesterday and Elijah Walker twice. So that's not a Grambling offensive line that's giving up sacks like that. So first things first, you got to take care of that. Grambling hasn't been able to run the ball like I've expected them to run the ball. So when you have home run hitters like C.J. Russell and my other Keelan Elder, when you have both of those guys and they haven't been able to get off as of yet, that's a bit concerning to me. But, we talk about, during the fall, Dr. Cavil, in terms of fan bases being on the ledge. I think Grambling's fan base right now is on the ledge. And I know everybody will say it's the spring, but it has to be a little bit concerning. It has to be concerning early.
And that ain't what social media will tell you, that they fans are on the ledge. And by the way, number 6, Story Jackson, look for him to be all SWAC. That's a foregone conclusion if he plays again like that.
Yeah, Story Jackson, he's an issue coming off the edge.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this is the story for the spring. The first one of the spring 2021. It's official from Charles Bishop. Grambling. Get off the edge.
Right now, yeah, I'm concerned.
BJ Jones, let's go back to you and talk about some of this offensive line. It's something that you think is extremely important. You said something earlier when people were talking about whether the spring was going to be played. You said some of the people that are going to probably have the most problem in terms of being in shape, and not because they weren't working out, but the type of shape you have to be would be the offensive line. And there may be some concerns with the offensive line play. Are you seeing some of these issues, bad and good, in terms of both teams, Prairie View, Grambling, in terms of the offensive schematics that you're seeing going on? Obviously, one team seemed to be able to maybe do a couple of other things with Prairie View having those turnovers, as you talked about. But you saw this in the Texas Southern Prairie View game. You saw this in the Jackson State Grambling game. You saw this early in the South Carolina State, Alabama A&M game. You saw it some in the Delaware State, South Carolina State. So tell the people a little more insight in terms of what you were speaking of in terms of the offensive line play and things that they may need to look at to get a better understanding why things are happening the way they happen.
So from an offensive line standpoint, it's easier to pass block because at that point, what I'm doing is what they call kick stepping, and then just making sure that the guy is not getting around me. When you're run blocking, and we're talking about different formations, what do my splits need to be on this formation? What do my splits need to be on this formation? And offensive line, generally, you have to practice coming off the ball and then moving another man against his will. There's no other way of getting better at that besides doing it. All right, you can be in the gym, you can do all that stuff, but besides doing it and being able to have that repetition, that's not a way to get better at it. So what you're seeing, especially in the run game, that's why you see pass blocking looks a little bit better, but run blocking, if the defense aligns this way, who do I have on this particular run blocking play? If they align this way, who do I have? If this linebacker blitzes, who do I check down to? There's so many different things that you have with run blocking that you don't have with pass blocking. And when you take that amount of time off and you're not doing it, you're getting away from the repetition of doing it. So now you're coming in rusty. And that's why the running game, that's why you're seeing a lot of teams that are averaging 2.9, 2.8, 3.4, 3.5 yards per carry, and you're not seeing that 4.8, you're not seeing that 5.6 that you normally would under normal circumstances.
Man, that's a great point. I'm glad you went inside that. I do want to go back to Charles and ask Charles a little bit in terms of what are your thoughts on Prairie View's defense? You know, this was a huge question, and we took a deep dive, and BJ Jones was happy of what he saw with Prairie View's defense because in a lot of ways he challenged them because he said the talent was there. He said they needed to step up and make some plays. Coaching was there. It wasn't so much about that. It was about the guys saying it was more of a want to. Well, it seemed like the want to is there. I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Mike thought about, gave us some pointers in terms of what he was seeing. We want to see what Charles said in terms of the defensive side of Prairie View.
With 9 defensive starters coming back and 4 all-SWAC selections, I'll be honest, I expected a little more of that first game. I thought Texas Southern was able to run the ball. BJ, you touched on Prairie View needed to be more physical, and this was a game that showed me this is the Prairie View defense that I'm expecting to see. This is the defense that I expect can challenge in the SWAC West. When you have all of those guys running around with Dumas and Story Jackson, all of those guys. So I really was impressed yesterday that they were able to get to Hickbottom and Elijah Walker as much as they did. They were really swarming all over the place yesterday. So if I'm a Prairie View fan, I'm excited. Because I know we're going to score points. Everybody scores points. We know that. But it's the defensive side of the ball that has been the question mark, and they came out to play yesterday. This is a Prairie View team that I will be scared of.
And Dumas, we talk about Story Jackson. Dumas is one of the best defensive tackles, defensive linemen in the conference. He wreaks havoc. And because of the havoc that he's able to wreak, he can play inside, he can play outside. You'll see him line up a defensive tackle. You'll see him line up a defensive end. Because of the havoc that he wrecks, you almost have to double him, which is going to leave everyone else up on one-on-one matchups. And you got a guy like Story that's going to take advantage of that like he has in these first 2 weeks.
Man, this is great conversation, boy. You talking about getting into the dirt in a lot of ways, boys. You circling back and getting some great information, man. This is what we do and why we do what we do. And I bring the experts to the table. They're going to take you inside to see what's going on so you can understand names and matchups and things to consider. So we're going to transition a little bit here. And we'll take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to go into the key matchups today. We're going to start with Tennessee State versus Illinois. In terms of Illinois, both of them coming in 0-2. So somebody's going to get off the snide today. I'm going to see what the guys think about this matchup and say who will finally get off the snide. This is Dr. Ville inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, and BJ Jones for our weekend edition of taking you inside look at HBCU football from a weekend perspective. With that, stay with us. We'll be right back after this quick break.
I'm attorney Clinton Paris, and Tampa's my community. I grew up here, went to school here, and my wife and I make our home here. What makes Tampa special are its people. So when I represent someone injured in my community, it's personal. Call my office and speak to a real lawyer and not some referral service. I will fight the insurance companies to get the settlement that you deserve. At the law office of Clinton Paris, we take the pain out of being hurt.
True Black Essentials is a retail opportunity to bring Black businesses under one roof where every product on every shelf in every aisle will be Black owned and Black produced by people all over the world. Statistics show that the $1.3 trillion of spending power that we have as Black people can easily be turned into each Black person having $2 million if we were to shop Black for 2 years. So True Black Essentials will launch an e-commerce store on November 1st, 2020, but we will open up brick and mortar stores in Atlanta, New Orleans, Charlotte, Houston, and Jacksonville, with the very first store opening in Atlanta, June 19, 2021.
It's never too early to be talking about. They compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, BJ Jones in terms of the weekend edition of Inside HBCU Sports Lab, breaking down HBCU football. We're going to look at some key matchups that are coming up today. That will be Eastern Illinois and Tennessee State, as I told you. And then we're going to go into that SWAC matchup rivalry game between Mississippi Valley at Jackson State. Stay tuned, because after our show, you'll have 1400 Club with Neely and Charles Bishop giving you insight and really breaking down that Mississippi Valley Jackson State. In fact, Charles is going to be so prepared, he'll dive and sneak out of here just a little bit early to make sure he's set up to go live at 11 o'clock for that. And then we'll close out for him here so you can transition smoothly. Stay on the live feed so you can see his BCS network to bring you all the HBCU action that you can get today. With that, BJ Jones wanted to sneak something in there before we transition to the games of the day. So I'm going to give him a little more time to see, what are you hearing from the streets, as we call it now, the social media plug? What you hearing, BJ Jones? What you want to share?
I just wanted to ask Mike, hey, do y'all have a quarterback controversy, over there in at Prairie View?
Mike, what you say?
I don't know if it's quite a controversy, but it was a big question mark coming into the season between three individuals: Trayvon Conley, TJ Starks. You had Shane Lawrence, the QB out of Cedar Hill, coming in, and TJ Sparks. So they weren't sure who. And you had, depending on which alumni group you were asking, some folks wanted Conley, some folks wanted Lawrence to step in. If that question hadn't been answered to right up before the Texas Southern game.
Who does Mike Washington want?
Mike Washington likes what he's seeing out of Conley.
Okay.
Wow, this is interesting. That was nice, Charles. Put him on the spot, what you say.
I mean, Charles didn't pull any punches, did he?
No, he didn't. But what comes around goes around.
I know it's coming. It's coming.
Man, let me get back on it before I lose this ship. This is good. Let's look at Eastern Illinois at Tennessee State, 1 o'clock matchup on ESPN Plus. So you have to have subscribed to be able to get this matchup. We'll give you in the number. So go ahead and stay locked into Charles and Neely in terms of the 1400 Club, and let us give you an update this weekend in terms of what took place in this game. Other than the Tennessee State fans, we know that you want to see it, but y'all SWAC fans out there, stay tuned, because y'all know y'all want to see what's going to go on between Valley and Jackson State, and you want to get the insight that you need coming from Charles and Needy of 1400 Club right here on the BCSN network. So stay put. But with that said, let's look at this Eastern Illinois Tennessee State matchup. I'm going to go to Mike first in terms of what that looks like, and then we'll do Charles, but give him a chance to get in there and give us a spin on the Jackson Valley before he has to jump out, and then we'll let BJ come back in and tie it all up so we can finish up on the Jackson State Valley. So, Mike, give me some updates on Eastern Illinois and Tennessee State. What's your thoughts?
Well, everybody knows both teams are looking for their first win of the season. They both dropped their first loss. Tennessee State dropped to Austin, PA, and Jacksonville, and the Panthers of Eastern Illinois lost to Southeast Missouri and UT Martin. So it's the question of who's going to have the better offense and defense, and who's going to basically, impose their offense, their will. The Panthers played a more competitive game last week. If you kind of look at the stats, when they lost to UT Martin at 28-15, Coach Cushing, he's off to a rough start though. And both teams, if you look at the last couple of years, I don't know, have finished above the middle of the pack. So I don't know how much. I think if you're a betting man, if you look at the statistics, you would say Eastern Illinois has a chance, a puncher's chance, just because they statistically look to have a better running game. And I don't know how well Tennessee State going to be. Or is it going to be that Tennessee State that finished well in the second half of that Austin, PA game? They, going down the halftime 20-0, but then came back in the second half and played a heck of a game. Defense stepped up. If we see that Tennessee State game, I think we'll see a very competitive game. If we see the first half version of Tennessee State, I think you have to give the edge to Eastern Illinois.
No doubt about it. With that, let me go to Charles before he has to jump in here and give him a chance. Tell us a little bit about the Eastern Illinois, Tennessee State, and then at the end of that, before you dive off, tell us some of your thoughts and things that you're going to give the followers to listen to when you take a deep dive in terms of Jackson, Mississippi Valley State.
Oh, sure thing. Well, first things first with Tennessee State and Eastern Illinois, the question for me is, does Tennessee State's offense show up today? We're just not used to watching this sort of Tennessee State offense really struggle to get the ball up and down the field. They really miss Chris Rowland out of that offense. And, Tennessee State, the offensive line normally takes over games and things of that nature, but running game has not been able to get off. So it'll be a tough go for them again today with a great quarterback at Eastern Illinois and Harry Woodbury. Transition to Jackson State, Mississippi Valley. On paper, it looks as though, Jackson State is the favorite or things of that nature. But as always, Mississippi Valley gives Jackson State everything they could want and then some, and then some, and then some. This really is a rivalry for Mississippi Valley State in terms of going against Jackson State. So I don't expect anything different today.
What does Charles Bishop say?
I think Jackson State, they've been doing enough stuff offensively. I think that has been the big surprise. The defense looks very, very solid. So we'll talk a little bit about that during the live show, the pregame, as we come to you an hour before the Jackson State Valley kickoff. So looking forward to it.
No doubt about it. As we know, you have to prep and get prepared for that. We'll take it from here. Last time Eastern Illinois and Tennessee played, Eastern Illinois got the best of Tennessee State, 49-38, going to BJ Jones in terms of this matchup here. What are your thoughts on Eastern Illinois and Tennessee State?
Well, with Tennessee State, I've watched them the last 2 weeks against Austin Peay as well as against Jacksonville State. And even at times against Jacksonville State, while they were in the game, it seemed like they weren't really in it. That offense struggles. Passing the ball efficiently. They really can't run it really well. I'm not used. Charles hit on their offensive line. This is an atypical Tennessee State offensive line. Defensively, you see some things that you like, but then they have spurts where they even kind of check out. And Eastern Illinois, they can run it and they can throw it. Their problem is, they really can't stop anybody. So it's going to be an interesting ball game. I would lean Eastern Illinois. I would like to see Tennessee State get this win because it's been a rough couple of seasons for Rod Reed and that squad up there. But I see this one going to the Panthers of Eastern Illinois.
Oh man, those Tennessee State fans, it's gonna be tough for them to hear that. But you call it like you see it. It's one of those seasons. It's going to be fascinating to see what's going on with Tennessee State. The OVC now, it's a change. They got two teams leaving out of there, Eastern Kentucky, taking their football and going to the Atlantic Sun that is starting up football. And so it's going to be fascinating to see what that looks like in terms of, as well as Jacksonville State moving and taking their ball with them to go to the Atlantic Sun. Fascinating to see what's going on there. As you talk about some of the background stuff, and I know this is a little bit off of the game, and we're going to come back in regards to take the deeper dive into Valley Jackson State. But just so people get an understanding what we're talking about, are you hearing any other teams that may be leaving the OVC, looking at the Atlantic Sun, or are they coming out of the Big South? Any updates and news in the formation of these new conferences? Obviously, the WAC is formulating and starting a football program at the FCS or conference division, if you would, at the FCS level. You saw most of those Texas teams go over to the WAC, which were Lamar, specifically Stephen F. Austin, Sam Houston State, Abilene Christian, making that move to go over there. Any thoughts in terms of what that looks like in terms of the changing and mixing of the guards with these conferences now, just holding 5, 6, 7 teams compared to 12 for the SWAC starting in 2021? BJ Jones?
I think that I've heard rumbles, and I don't know how true this is, but it's pretty consistent that the OVC they're probably going to go after UT Chattanooga and East Tennessee State, two of the Tennessee schools that currently play in the SoCon. I'm not sure if UT Chattanooga would make that move along with East Tennessee State, but that would only help the OVC because you'll get more teams from right there in the state of Tennessee. And then you almost have at that particular point, the OVC just being even more a Tennessee-centric conference. And that really cuts down on travel costs when you're talking about the non-revenue sports. So we'll see what happens there. But I'm also hearing that Austin Peay looking like they may shop around if the OVC is not able to land East Tennessee State and UT Chattanooga.
Interesting. Fascinating there. Thanks for sharing that. You can only get that here on the Inside HBCU Sports. When we call conference churning, giving you an insight of what that looks like, not just with the HBCUs, with the historically white colleges and universities, I like to call them. With that being said, let's turn it back with our final analysis, which people are talking about the game of the day, which is Mississippi Valley State at Jackson State. I'm going to stay with you, BJ Jones. What are you looking to see in this matchup today in terms of what's going on in this game?
What does Mississippi Valley look like? You know, they've had 2 games canceled. They're coming in to their first contest of the spring season. What do they look like? And can they make a ball game out of this? We remember 2019, Mississippi Valley let this ball game get away from them. A ball game that went to overtime. Mississippi Valley had several chances to win it, and Jackson State was the cat with 9 lives, and you know they rolled out of Edabina, with a win. So what does Mississippi Valley State look like? Can they run the ball efficiently and effectively? Can they garner enough offense to keep that Jackson State offense off of the field? And when they're on the field defensively, can they stop the Jackson State run game? I think if you can make Jackson State one-dimensional, I think that can only benefit you. If they can stop that run game, they have an opportunity to make this game interesting. And for some reason, Charles hit it right on the head. Mississippi Valley plays Jackson State as hard as they play anyone else. We'll see. Do we get another one of those classic Mississippi Valley State, the Delta Devils playing out of their minds and really push Jackson State to the brink? Or does Jackson State kind of, roll them over? So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Jackson State, in my opinion, they got probably the best duo of linebackers in the country. With what they have now, and I like seeing those two. Hampton and the kid that came in from Missouri. I like watching them play the game of football. You play the linebacker position. It is literally poetry in motion to watch those two.
We got about 5 minutes left before we close this and turn it over to, as we said, Charles Bishop and Neely for the 1400 Club. But I want to get Mike's thoughts in terms of this Jackson State, Mississippi Valley State matchup. What are you looking at in the game?
Well, you don't know what Mississippi Valley brings coming into the season. I totally agree. They call it a rivalry, but the Tigers own this series, 57-5 or something like that. I don't really call that a rival. You got Aubrey Miller, the reigning SWAC Defensive Player of the Year. You got Keontae Hampton as the HBCU Whisperer alluded to. Keontae Hampton recovered a fumble, clinched the game against Grambling. So you expect those two to come out. Tyson Alexander had his official coming out against Grambling State. So he had 186 yards. So you expect them to run the ball well. You don't know what kind of defense Mississippi Valley has. You expect the offense to function a little bit more efficiently in Jackson State. So I expected, despite a colossal collapse, I expect a game that will go well in favor of Jackson State if they, come show up and do what they're supposed to and take care of business. So I expect a good play from the quarterback position at Jalen Jones. So there's nothing that leads me. You talking about Valley. We talking about Valley? Practice. We talking about practice. We talking about Valley. So unless they show me something, this is Jackson State's game to lose.
Man, I tell you, Mike has got to be the toughest person out there on Mississippi Valley State. He lets everybody know, nope, you're not fooling me with all this great talk. This is Valley.
Every year, you and Charles talking about, no, you got to watch Valley. You got to watch Valley. We talking about Valley.
Oh, boy, that's funny. That's funny. In terms of that, just a quick sneeze, and we'll go in this a little more. Starting with you, BJ Jones. We broke down the games today in terms of Eastern Illinois and Tennessee State, and then obviously Mississippi Valley State at Jackson State. For a tease in terms of next weekend, what are some of the biggest games that you have on your radar that people should be gearing up for next weekend, BJ?
Jackson State going down to Montgomery to play Alabama State. I think that's one to look at. Texas Southern out in Arlington. The Southern bounce back. How for real is Texas Southern? They look a lot better after what Prairie did on yesterday. And we got a full slate in the SWAC. How does this thing play out? How does it shake up? Because right now, it seems like everybody's right there together, and the margin of error is as slight as it's been. You don't have really a team running away from it, running away with it. So those are my biggest watches. Really, Jackson State going down to Montgomery. Is Alabama State really improved, or has Southern declined? And we talk about panicking. The state of panic in the state of Louisiana, with the Grambling fans as well as the Southern fans. Grambling is full all on. Southern's they're on deck. They're in the waiting line to panic, just like Grambling fans. And then lost next week, you're going to see full blown on panic statewide down in the booth.
So you're telling me if Southern doesn't find a way to get it done against Texas Southern next week, that Southern will join Grambling on the ledge?
Yes. You will see a lot of logins, the coacheshotseat.com, coming out of the state of Louisiana if that happens.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, this is going to be interesting. It's tough. Boy, this spring, we just thought it was going to be a tune-up, and now we starting to see that on the ledge. For real. With that being said, Mike, what games are you looking forward to next weekend?
All of them. Alabama A&M Prairie View. Is Alabama A&M. They are who we thought they are. We'll see it. Here's a matchup, an early matchup. That's that data point that you talk to. Will Southern University and Texas Southern both resort to quarterback committee? You're 99.999.999% sure that Texas Southern will. I don't know about Southern after that last performance. They were tough. Are they going to go with quarterback by committee as well? And I agree that if Southern loses that game, you talk about the emotional, psychological state of the inhabitants of the state of Louisiana. You thought COVID-19 was bad? Man, this is going to send that state into an emotional abyss. And then Jackson State going to Alabama State. That'll be an interesting matchup. We'll see how Alabama State fares against this Jackson State offense. So, and then Arkansas Pine Bluff, who showed up really well. We'll see how well they play against Grambling State, because I'm telling you, from what I saw, that is not your mom and daddy's Arkansas Pine Bluff. My uncle went to Arkansas Pine. That is not your mom and daddy's Arkansas Pine Bluff. So I get Big Earl in my ear talking about, I played with LC Greenwood. Man, that was 80 years ago. They coming back. Okay, we will see. But it'll be an interesting matchup, them against Grambling. Is Grambling going to bounce back, or is this really, really that Arkansas Pine Bluff already taking another step forward?
No doubt about it. Yes, this is extra credit weekend. As Roy said, I like that terminology. A special edition of Inside the HBCU Game Day. That'll do it for us. Stay tuned, 1400 Club. They're getting it done. Let me give some shout outs. Wendy Jenkins, Bishop, Carl Edmond, Jake Mack, afternoon fellas, Isaiah Thornton, A.D. Drew is on here, Joe Clay of the 1876 Sports and Culture Podcast. Look for their show coming out this week on Tuesday, and look for them to start looking at transitioning to a a virtual platform as well. We got more to come. G-Boom Holly is always in the house. All right. Got to catch a show live. He's happy about that. Kimberly Reynolds, the national president there. Carl Edmond, Yvonne McIntosh Maxwell, Tommy Gaucher on here bringing it down. Carl Edmond, Matthew Bradford, LaShant Harris, Jarvis Austin, Friedra Bowen on here. G Boom said, yeah, the State Fair Classic, the only game no one could watch or ever listen to as there was no kind of broadcast. I think you had a broadcast that Grambling put out there, but they had no information, so people had to fish for it. Amos Fawcett, Reginald Johnson on here talking about D.I. Love. He's getting ready for the game. Brent Brunson, Roosevelt Huggins, Valley Nation, stand up. Don't take that. Jarvis Austin, is he talking about Michael's comments? With that, thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, and BJ Jones, the HBCU Whisperer. I call him just simply the HBCU football analyst, bringing you all the news. Check him out. He'll be on live this evening, so make sure you stay tuned so he can give you a breakdown and let you all know what's going on across HBCU sports, specifically in terms of the SWAC. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavill's Inside HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 o'clock. And look for our extra credit time that we do on Sunday with BJ Jones. We look forward to next week, and we will discuss the latest news in the lab. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Dream big. We'll continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Mike.
Of course.
BJ Jones. Lecture dismissed.
Hey, come on.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food? Like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp, tofu, and rasta pasta? Well, find your way over to Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta.
Them belly full, but we hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open till 4 a.m. Come to Mango's and put some spice in your life.
So we've got a good thing going.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta. For more info or directions, call 404-698-3992 or